Hey folks, it's time for the quote of the day, and today it may get me in trouble again. This may be another one that gets me in trouble because of who I'm quoting and what they stand for. Today I'm quoting one of the most influential and important revolutionaries in the history of our world, and that is I'm not overselling that in any way, shape, or form. I'm speaking, of course, about a man whose birthday is supposed to be today. They say his birthday is today. Most people celebrate his birthday as that it's today, and a man who was essentially the Mexican Robin Hood, and that is Pancho Villa. Today is the birthday of the revolutionary leader, Pancho Villa. Now, I want to make this very clear. There is a lot of different opinions about this man, and this was basically about 100 years ago that this was all happening, and so there's a lot there, right? Well, he died in 1923. So maybe a little bit more than 100 years, like say 120, 130 years ago. But what he did for Mexico and what he did for the idea of revolution is it cannot be oversold. Now there are a lot of people, like I said, that have different opinions about him. But here's the general, I guess you could say, yardstick on this one. This is how you measure it. Whenever somebody has power, what they do with that power is, in my opinion, and I've heard this said many times before in different ways, that once somebody's in power, you get to see who they really are. Power people don't change when they have power, just like people don't change when they have money. It doesn't necessarily change them; it reveals them. And if that's the case, if you believe that, which most people would agree with that, if you believe that, then without a doubt, Pancho Villa is easily one of the most kind, benevolent, amazing leaders this country, or not this country, but this world has ever seen, and certainly in Mexico's history. And I say that because Pancho Villa could have easily been the president of Mexico. He could have easily have taken it over. This was a man that was so charismatic that he went from literally him and eight other dudes to 6 months later riding south to the capital of Mexico, to Mexico City, with I think it was 15,000 men. In 6 months, he was able to rally that many people to his side. This was a man that when he was the governor of Chihuahua, in the first month he was governor, he built 50 schools. Keeping in mind that he never went to school. It's one of his most famous quotes is, "I never had the opportunity to learn anything other than how to fight." And boy did he. Boy did he. He is known historically for being, first of all, an accomplished military mind, but second of all, being completely and totally brutal in every single fight ever. He would just go through towns and villages and just kill anybody that raised a weapon. Like literally, there were no prisoners, there was no survivors. He just killed everybody that raised a weapon. He any women and children he kept. They got to take over basically. And then all of the men that would raise weapons, he would put them down. He would. That's just the reality of it. And this was part of his kind of MO. This is what he did. And this is why a lot of people, some people consider him to be this, horrible, like, villain almost in history, this miscreant. Even terrorist is a term that people have used. And he did have his moments with America where that was true. But in typical American fashion, our government, and because of the media at the time around him, at one point in time, he was this hero that everybody loved. It created this legend in America of this great leader that was, liberating Mexico. And then, a couple years later, he was villain numero uno and was, thought of as this horrible terrorist. And it all because he attacked a border town. I think it was Columbus, New Mexico, and he attacked that town, and that was it. We sent I think Woodrow Wilson was president at the time, and he sent like 10,000 troops, led by General Pershing, I believe, to if I remember the name correctly, and that could be wrong, to go get Pancho Villa, and he didn't. He never caught him. He never caught him, but he did leave essentially a trail of scattered buildings and bodies behind him as he ran from Pershing. So this is one of those things where I just I can't help but want to celebrate this man, especially when I think about today's world and how much Americans need to understand minds like his, need to understand what he fought for, why he fought, and what he was doing. This is a man, when people call him the Mexican Robin Hood, this is not overselling it, right? Like this is who he was. This was someone who saw that people in his country were getting rich off the backs of the people, right? Like they were taking advantage of the law. They were I mean, it is no the Mexico of 1900s, like 1900 literally. The Mexico, let's say 1910 because it's easier for people to get their head around. 1910 is essentially the same as America today. You have a wealthy class, and then you have everybody else working under them. And the people that are just under the wealthy class believe that they're part of the wealthy class, even though they're not. And wouldn't, if push came to shove, they would be the ones that got kicked in the face down the slide, like in A Christmas Story. Like those are those ones. And then everybody else is just varying degrees of poor, right? Like that's what we have in America today. And Pancho Villa saw that. He saw it because he was one of the poor. And when he had the opportunity, because that's all he knew how to do, like he said, is fight. When he had the opportunity, he joined a gang of criminals, is what they called them back then. But what they were doing is they were going and quite literally robbing from the rich and giving to the poor. They would go with his 40 or 50 men that he was part of, and he wasn't the leader of this. This was just, he was part of it. He would go and they would raid rich ranchers' places, take their cattle, take a lot of their valuables, and then they would go and give them to the poor, right? Like that's what he did. That was, and of course they would take enough for them to live, and if there were any weapons or anything like that, they would take them themselves. But for the most part, this was just him giving to the people of his country because he saw what the rich were doing, and he understood that they could not reach that fairly, right? Like they were taking advantage of what the country was doing for him, and so he did something about it. This is the kind of revolution that we should be talking about. This is the kind of thinking that we need in America today. Now, I'm not saying that there's anybody in America that even vaguely resembles, not physically, but mentally, Pancho Villa. Of course, I'm not saying that, but it is really important to understand that this man had the opportunity at complete power, and when he had it, it was in his hand, he could have run the country. He could have been the most important man. He just sat in the president's chair for a picture and then got up and left. And it wasn't until his assassination in 1923 when he had talked about maybe getting involved in politics. Like he had finally at that point in time settled down and said, maybe I will do it. Maybe I can do it. They saw him as a threat because they knew that if he got in power, he would do the things he had always done: give to the people, take care of the people, build schools, build hospitals. This is what he did. This is what he did when he had power. He built schools to educate people because he knew what it meant to not be educated. He understood that it was a leg up for people. He built hospitals. He built places for women and children to go, to learn, to feel safe. This is what Pancho Villa was. This is what represents him. And people that call him a terrorist today do so out of fear and ignorance. And they do it probably because of the quote of the day. Pancho Villa once said, "Armies are the props of tyranny. There could be no dictator without an army." Armies are the props of tyranny. There can be no dictator without an army. Now, America doesn't really work that way. The army that we have in place now is essentially the law enforcement apparatus of this country. That's the army. And you needn't look any further than the things that we see in certain cities and towns that if you even say them on this app, the video will get taken down. But you know what I'm talking about, and you know exactly what I mean. So just keep that in mind. Understand that we're at that tipping point again in America. We're at that tipping point in world history where revolution may be the only option, and leaders like Pancho Villa need to make a return. Happy birthday to Pancho Villa. The rest of you take care of yourself. Take care of others. I'll talk to you soon.